we go. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you guys so much for joining us today for our September webinar. I'm Robbyn Glinsmann. I'm Director of Gifted and Talented and Advanced Placement here at the Oklahoma State Department of Education.
Good afternoon. I'm Arlene Williams. I am with the College Board with the Southwest Regional Office, State District Partnerships Division.
Wonderful. And we're so glad you guys are here with us today. So we're going to go over some of the latest information, getting you ready to start the school year. And for those of you that are already registered and moving on, we're going to share some new information for you. We're also going to hear from a couple of schools that piloted this program last year and give them the microphone and allow them some time to talk to you about some things they learned. The chat box is open throughout today's webinar, so feel free to type in anything in that chat box that you would like questions answered. We also have a Google document, so I've put that in the chat box. You're more than welcome to pull that up and type the question in there. If you're watching this recorded, that link to that Google document is right on the AP webpage of the OSDE, right where you found this recording link. You can still go into that and type your questions. So we're going to go ahead and get started. What do you think we're going to?
There we go. All right. So we're going to, as Robbyn mentioned, we're going to do a couple of introductions. We've introduced ourselves. We also have a third person with us today. We have Shauna Nord, who is with the Oklahoma State Department with CTE. So do you want to say hi, Shauna?
Hi.
We thought that all three of us here together would be able to best support the work that you're doing, moving us for the November 15th deadline. So if you have questions for either or all of us, please don't hesitate to ask. So you're seeing our agenda today. We're going to look at the 2019-20, the planning coordinator, the planning calendar. Can't talk. I've been talking for 3 hours. Planning calendar in your coordinator manual. We're going to look at what should have happened in August and September, look ahead in October. We're going to look at the action steps that we'd like for you to complete by Thursday, the ones we'd like you to complete by October 1st. And then we're going to have the panelists come on and give you some real world best practice on how they made things happen last year and the year before, and what some changes that they're making currently to get through the process. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. So just a reminder for the folks that what we're kind of work through. These are the process or the steps that have to happen in the process to get you to November 15th. The first two that I talked about earlier are accessing the system. There are 2 steps required in that. That is where you're going to go in. You got an access code on August the 1st as an APC. Your principal's got the same access code. You set up the system and you completed the participation form. That's what we'd like for you to have done by Thursday. You're in the 6 weeks of school for most of you already. Those pieces, if you're having difficulties getting them done, please call AP Services or give me a call. We want to kind of move things forward to get to the next 2 steps, creating sections and enroll students that really gives students and teachers access to the resources. And then the last step is doing ordering exams. So if a sort of a larger picture of where we are as the state, there are about 244 districts that we are anticipating that are going to order AP exams. The good news is that we have 48 that haven't completed the first 2 steps where accessing and access the system. They haven't set up APRO or doing their participation form. I'm confident that the 48 of you out there by Thursday will have it done. As a much larger look at the state on creating sections and enroll students, we've got a long way to go. We're at about a little less than 50%. Some of that I'm hoping it's because you're looking at schedule changes and you've decided to wait until that happens. I'm hoping that it's firm up now and we'll see a lot of movement forward in the next couple of weeks. So what we're going to do is kind of go through some screenshots of what that looks like. So as I go through the first 2 pretty quickly, because those are relatively easy, and go through the the ones we want you focusing on between now and October the 1st, much slower. So accessing the system. This is what it looks like. I think the first thing to remember when you're doing this is that you must always go through myap.collegeboard.org. You cannot log on to the system from your College Board account. We talked about this earlier in the presentation that I did with Fall Counselor Workshop. We think they're merging the two systems, that at some point you should be able to get to the AP ordering system from your professional account, but I would start at myapcollegeboard.org before you actually, to make sure that's set up and is working for you. Excuse me, my allergies again. So this is what it looks like when you're going to go in and sign in. As I'm saying, I'm going to kind of walk through these pretty quickly just to show you the screenshots, and mainly so that you'll have a record of them as you are doing them yourself, so that you'll know that you're on the right track as you're walking through the initial process. The other thing to notice we talked about before is that once you go in and set up APRO, you have 6 days in order to set your default. The default is that all students will take the test, but if you're going to change it to say that students can choose whether they're going to take the test or not, you must go into the advanced setting and change that. After day 6, it stays with the default of yes. So here's a screenshot of what you're going to be asked to set up your school and just getting the system set up. Your exam administration. There's also a question that's going to be in here about whether or not you're going to allow homeschool students to test. That was a significant conversation this morning, and you'll need to either clear that with your office or with your district office, because what that means is your name goes on a list that College Board is going to provide to homeschool students when they ask, where can I go to take a test? And it may not just be homeschool students, it will be districts, students in another district that, for example, may want to challenge a Chinese, the Chinese exam, because we don't offer it at our school, but I know of a district that does offer it. If your name is on the list, then when they call us, we're going to give out your school as someone that they can contact. So please make sure you confirm that. We encourage that. I'm going to ask Robbyn to kind of step in here about, because people have been asking about the rules around that.
Yes, so we have many parents that will call me here at the State Department and ask where they can take their students to test. And so that list is what I use, and I give those names to those parents. We have also been working very hard to make sure that the homeschool parents and the other entities around know of this same ordering deadline, because they will fall into the same November 15th deadline or the late fee that is associated with it. And so we are encouraging all of them to get those calls set up very quickly into the schools. So as soon as you have the chance to complete this form, those few that are left, it will help us know where we can direct those phone calls. But those homeschool students would then contact you, sign up via your roster. They would be an exam-only student, and you would collect the money, and then they would come back in May to take that test.
So just make sure as you're clicking through these boxes that you read all of them, and make sure that you are intending to volunteer. Also, a best practice is to put that information on your website. Wherever you have your information about AP at your campus level and at the district level, you may want to put something up there about how homeschool students are handled or addressed in your district. Yes, they're welcome, or no, they're not. So that will help some of the processing and questions that may or may not come your way. This is exam decision indicator that we talked about earlier, making sure actually it's 7 days, not 6 days that you have before it actually stays with the default. Teacher roster management. Again, I'm clicking through these quickly. As I click through one, if you have a question about a screenshot, please stop me. I really just wanted you to have these screenshots as you go through and do the process to make sure that you're on the right track. We want to get to creating the sections. Here's the part where you begin to set up your participation form. This takes the place of the old form that you used to have to complete and fax back to us. We no longer will do that. This is now done online. You only need to do one of these, and it's an electronic signature. So it goes through that, and once it's signed, then you have completed the first 2 steps. It's really easy. Just if you sit down and do it, as long as I recommend that you have your master schedule with you. You'll need it for that as well as for the next part that we're going to talk about. But if it's at all humanly possible, we'd really like for you to get that done by Thursday. If you run into any problems, I'll have the AP Educator Service Customer Service line at the end, or in my contact information. Give us a call. We'll see if we can help you get through the process. What we want to focus the rest of our time before we get to the panelists is on creating sections. So this is where you should be currently working in. If you've already done this, great. I encourage you to reach out to your counterparts to give them some advice and some suggestions on how to do this. One of the things that we talked about this is who's going to do what. You've got to decide whether it's going to be the AP coordinator, whether you're going to sit and create the sections for every AP class on your campus. That's why I said if you have your master schedule with you, if you can work it that way, or whether you're going to allow your teachers to create those for you. The recommendation that I have with that is whoever does it, you or your teachers, that you create a naming convention and you use that convention for all your courses. When you get your data back, or as you have to try to sort and manipulate the data, it makes it easy if you're able to sort using the same naming convention. The other thing that's going to be a little bit of a change from the past is how closely the AP coordinator is going to have to work with their AP course audit administrator. We have made some changes this year in that not all courses must go through the full audit, meaning that they have to submit a syllabus and have it approved. There are still some courses that have to do that, so I'm going to recommend you go to the AP Central to your course exam page to find out which courses have to do the full audit and which ones just have to do the course audit form to authorize that. But what has to happen is that the AP course audit administrator has to confirm every single teacher that is teaching an AP course. They have to authorize that for the current school year. So that's what this looks like when it happens when creating the class sections in April. Oops, it's not moving forward. So by doing that, you're just it's actually pretty easy. It just gets time consuming if you have to do a lot of them. You're going to add a section, you're going to name the section, you're going to, how many seats, maximum seats that you're going to allow. And here's where you can do either all of your courses at once, or you can wait and do your spring semester courses later. So if you have some courses that don't start until January, you can wait to create those sections later, or you can do them now and just label them as spring only. So they're standard full year, they can be second semester only, or an exam only section. Remember, those sections are for students who are not actually sitting in an AP class. They are challenging an exam, or they could be a virtual student, or they could be the homeschool students that we talked about. There are lots of variations on the theme on who those exam-only students are. And you can create those sections at any time, and you can actually have more than one student in that section. So you don't have to have an exam-only AP chemistry. If you have 5 students that are taking it, that are challenging it, you can put all 5 of them in one course. So if you're creating the second semester class, this is a screenshot of how to do that. You're going to, when the deadlines, the final ordering, notice that there's a different deadline for theirs. The standard ordering is November the 15th. The spring is March the 13th. say that right? November 15th and March 13th. So depending on how much time you have, you really don't have to create your spring semester courses now. Those of you who have trimesters where you're running 3 semesters within a school year, you're going to have to look at where your trimesters lie and then probably call AP Educator Services to find out where your deadlines are going to be. I would get that from them and probably in writing so there's no misunderstanding and you're not having to worry about late fees. So adding a co-teaching or team teacher so that as I teach AP Lang and Robbyn and I, we teach together, or she's my co-teacher and I want her to be able to have access to the resources. I want her to be able to monitor special education students and those pieces. I can assign a team teacher, but that team teacher must also meet the AP course audit requirements as well. There's more information about that inside of the AP coordinator manual. There's also the way that some districts are using this tool is that I've got content specialists who are wanting to get in and see the resources. Technically, they can't have access to the resources because they're not AP teachers, but if I put them as a co-teacher or a team teacher in a content where they're a specialist, they can see the resources and are able to sort of view what's available from that lens. So here's how you're going to do the exam-only sections. This may come into play a lot, not just for your homeschool students, but for depending on how your partners with your career tech schools. It's my understanding, and Shauna, you can chime in here anytime you like, that you have some career tech schools that order and offer their exams, and some career tech campuses that don't. They teach the classes, but the exams are actually given on their home campuses, and then you've got some variations and a theme there. So when you're going to use this exam-only section is when the course is not actually taught by a teacher on your campus, and there's a student who is challenging that exam. So that's how you use the exam only. Or I've had some private schools call and say, we don't teach AP, but we have students who take the AP exams, so they would do exam-only sections. But the caveat is exam-only sections does not give teachers or students access to teacher resources.
These would also be your students who are maybe tapping into OSSM's virtual offerings so that they take the virtual course there at your school and they get it via the computer, but they would need to sit at your school for the exam. And so we would go in and do these. So there's a few variations of that. Like Arlene said, the AP Services for Educators is a great resource. I have put their phone number already into the Google document so that you can have that, but always reach out to them if you have questions. They are the most up to date. Also, when you do contact them and you have questions, make sure you get your claim number.
So you'll need to get the date and time of the call, the agent or the representative that you're talking to, and a number. And if your issue isn't resolved, if they're not able to answer it immediately, they should give you a case or a reference number. So you want to write all that down, because just in case you don't get the answer that you're looking for, or you have to contact me and I have to escalate it, I need all of that information to move it forward. And it's not a bad idea that even if they are able to resolve it, that you ask them to send you that information in writing. We have trained a lot of people to answer a lot of questions, but there's just a lot of moving parts. So I always recommend that if it isn't something easy that, you know, you're like, oh, I should have got that, it's in the coordinator's manual. If it's fairly complex, I would get an answer for them. Thank you for that answer, but can you email that to me just so that I can put it in my documentation?
Always best practices there.
Yes.
And I'd like to throw out there for the career techs, I would say if they're a student at a career tech, they really need to register through their career tech as far as sign up, to have the teacher do it, sign up, have them go through that. The student uses their same account. That career tech teacher will give them their course code so that the scores are coming back to the career tech teachers and not to the school. And I know that that's been a problem in the past, and hopefully we're hoping this year it curbs some of that where career techs aren't trying to seek out those scores. And so I would highly encourage any of the career techs to make sure that they're doing that. And I think the majority of them are doing it. There are a few cases where there's some incentives at the local schools. And so the students are taking them at those local schools, but for the most part, it would be helpful if the career techs want their scores and to set up their class codes for there.
Yeah, so to echo what Shauna said, so let me be clear on that. That's where the scores are go. This year, in the past, we were able to sort of do some magic with scores. With the way this is set up, the scores follow the sections and how that's set up. So wherever teachers set up their sections, their course codes and their join codes, that's who the scores belong to. Now, when you're talking about exam-only sections, that's a question I haven't gotten an answer for. But so with the example Shauna gave, if the career tech teachers want their scores, they have to create sections and join codes. Then those students and those scores belong to that career tech teacher. Okay, any other questions about that? If you'll pop it in there. I know that has been sort of an ongoing conversation, and there are still some, a few nuanced questions that we're working through about that, but it's important to note that the creating these sections and these join codes is as clean as they are is how your data is going to follow. When you get your reports back in July, it's based on what these sections look like. That's another reason why having a standard naming convention makes a big difference.
So we have one question that's come up on the Google document that I want to ask Arlene here. So it says, is there any way to change the default on taking the exam past the 7 days? I didn't get mine changed in time.
No, I'm sorry. So at this point, the answer that I have is no, but my answer is always called AP services. Sometimes they have, if there are enough people who are calling that have an issue with it, they're able to sort of create a workaround and do something different. So I would encourage you to call them and see if they are able to do something on the back end to change the default. Because right now it's set at yes, so you'll have to go in for every student who says no and do that manually.
Okay. Excellent, thank you so much.
So what you see now is the slide view of what it looks like once you've created your class sections, where you have second semester courses, exam only courses, the number of students who have joined a course, and your full roster of class. So all of this information you can see. And remember, I want to call out number 4, that you can download all join codes. So as the AP coordinator, if your teachers forget their join codes, you have the ability to go in and find them, and that most of the information in APRO you can download into an Excel document so that you can manipulate it, the information as you see fit to make sure that you have a successful administration. So here's the join codes. If the teachers create the codes, they get their join codes, they give them to the students, and this is how students are connected to that course. And they then have to go into, again, My AP app to log on. So this is where we've heard there can be a little bit of a slowdown in the process is when the students are actually trying to join. So there's a couple of best practices. One is that knowing that it's probably going to take a full class period. If you're a teacher and you've got 30 students that you're trying to get to all join, it's not going to, it sounds like it should take 5 to 10 minutes and you're done. Unless every one of those students remembers their College Board account and their password and can log on pretty quickly, it's going to take at least one and maybe an additional class period. I do recommend, though, you clear it with your principal and your administrator that says, we are doing this today, and it's helpful if when students get stuck, they can call College Board immediately right there with an adult in the room, and I can have multiple students on the phone with College Board at one time instead of them all waiting for a phone. That can expedite the process. Also know that if the College Board customer service is not able to resolve an issue of combining accounts, I created an account somewhere and I can't remember, my mom has a password and the email address, they will create an interim account, and that's actually what they're calling, an interim account, that will be in effect until June. And so you have from now until June to resolve it, to find that other account and combine it with the one that you just created, but they're not going to hold up the process and wait until we find the account and get your password and all that information. So we're hoping that some of those things make this process a little faster. Just let your teachers know that this could take more time than they are anticipating.
So we have a question in the chat box that's been put up directly related to that says, who creates an interim account? They called College Board and said there wasn't such a thing.
There absolutely is. So if you, again, if you have, so the College Board is the person on the other side. The College Board customer service person creates that account. Make sure that they're also calling in, not from the adults. There's actually a special number that the students call in when they're trying to log on to their accounts and they're having problems. They will take them through steps to try to resolve the issue. Do you remember your mother's maiden name? There are questions they're going to ask. They're going to try to figure out how to resolve it. But from the information that I have is that if after a while they are unable to create it, they will create a temporary account. And the language that I was given as of last Friday was an interim account. And they will use that account until June or July, when it's temporary and it will go away. So whoever the person is, if you have, again, the name of the person you talked to, the date, and all that information about the call, if you can forward that to me, then I will be happy to move it forward. They put the number 888-225-5427. I'll have to look that up, but there is a special number for students.
I'll look that up while Arlene's talking, and we'll get back with you, Mandy. So don't worry.
Yes. So thank you for pointing that out. It is not the same account, the phone number for educators. There is a different account for when you're working with students and trying to get them to log on. So there are some additional things that you can do that we're not going to go over, but I wanted to point out that as you are working through students changing courses and students enrolling and withdrawing from your classes, that you can delete sections, that there's a difference between a join code and a transfer code. So those of you that are waiting for your schedules to settle down, you can transfer students from one English Lang AP class to another English Lang AP class. There's a way to do that, and everything just happens smoothly. But that's not the same thing as a join code, and it's also the transfer code is used if you have students who come in from other places. So enroll students is what's going to happen after with the join code, and you're probably at the last step where you're looking at the rosters, the exam materials, when you have conflicting exams, you're dropping students and transfers. This part, we're not going to spend a lot of time through. This is really just intended for me to give you the slides, because there is a webinar that's coming up that College Board is going to provide, that the program is going to provide, that's going to go through all of these pieces. It just happens in between time of when we're having our next webinar, and I wanted you to have screenshots so that if you're ready to move forward before the webinar, I encourage you to move forward. But what we're really wanting you to do right now, between now and October 1st, is create your sections and have students go in and join in those classrooms. So here's just, I'm going to flip through them as we get our panelists sort of get ready, because that's where we're going to next, to kind of look at the rosters for the enrollments and how you can see those pieces of information and see the exams. If you wanted to look at a single student, so you're trying to figure out cost as those pieces and all this information. So again, just screenshots that you have available to you to make sure that you have, you're not surprised as you go through some of these processes and as you use your AP coordinator manual. Uh-oh. Let's see. Try this, Sarah. Let's see if that. Uh-oh, Gary. We broke it. What number are we on? Do you have any idea? 27. Sorry, we have technical difficulties.
Well, we moved to the whole screen.
It's right there.
Oh,
There we go. Ah, Robbyn's amazing. Okay. Thank you. How to drop a student before the ordering deadline. Other information about transferring out. Student from former student uses a transfer code at a new school, transfers N, and now we're at the pilot. Again, I know some of you are going, oh my gosh, you went through those last slides quickly. That was not, those are not for this webinar. There is another webinar that's coming up from the College Board that will go over all of those things. It's just, it's going to happen in between our next one in October, and I wanted you to have the screenshots as you prepare for that next webinar.
And don't forget, we will post these slides on the State Department AP website, along with the Google document and the recording of today's video. So those will be there for you to access, especially those of you that are still getting registered. Those steps will be there. So we are so excited. We have a few visitors on with us today. These went through the pilot last year. So as you can see on the screen, we actually have 8 school districts that went through a pilot for the previous 2 years. So they piloted these new online services that College Board had. So they have a vast amount of experience in learning, and they have a few years under their belt. So we have them on board today. So first we have Tiffany Ellerick. Tiffany is the academic counselor, the AP coordinator, also at Edmond Memorial High School. We also have Matt Caldwell. Matt Caldwell works in the Mid-Dell district, and he's the AP coordinator for the district. So we're going to let them unmute themselves, and we've got a few questions for them. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go question by question. We'll let Tiffany start and let her talk first and give her perspective, and then Matt will be able to add in. I'm also going to pitch it to Shauna Nord at the same time. Shauna is my counterpart at the Career Tech, but Shauna was in a district this time last year as an AP coordinator at Edmond North High School. And so Shauna also has a vast amount of experience going through this. So she might have some insight that will help. Unfortunately, Benet could not be with us today. And so we won't have her on, but we'll get some insight from her. So first question, Tiffany and Matt, what would you recommend to districts is the best strategy to implement to ensure a successful transitioning to the expectations of the new platform? Okay. Let's see. Okay, Tiffany, go ahead. We can hear you now.
Sorry. And so I think the best practices is to get the teachers on board. They really have to help you, and they're the ones that have to remind them when it's due. They can check and see who has said yes or no. And so they really need to keep on to the students, because it's impossible for you to do that. So I would say get the teachers help to have the kids commit to the test or not commit. So the teachers on board.
It's a really great point, making sure that your teachers are on board and have those pieces there. So Matt, what would you also add to this?
So we created basically a front and back document that really lays out everything that kids need to know. We do the deadline a couple weeks before we need to do finalize information. We make sure that we put those dates bold. Our sites kind of do it differently depending on their preference. Some will pull kids out in large groups, and the AP coordinators will kind of go through that in a large group. Others will have the teachers do it. But one of the things that some of our AP coordinators have said is when kids are setting up their they're setting up their accounts and things like that, to make a master list of the usernames and passwords so that you can help them access if they forget it, have them put it on their phone somewhere to help remember. But we kind of put the information out there quickly. We use a lot of just like remind apps and things like that to make sure kids are kind of on track. So
that's an excellent perspective there, Matt, to make sure that maybe the teacher gets an access of the student's login, not necessarily the password, but just help those students out that way that they have those. Because remember, these students will use the same access in July to access their scores. So you'll want to make sure that they're up to date when they can't get a hold of you as the teachers, so they have that. Shauna, would you add anything in also about some best practices?
I would just say from a school standpoint, to make sure the students are not using their school email. Our firewall was blocking that, so students weren't getting emails from College Board. And so we found that, and when they graduate, they don't have access to it. And none of them will remember their password come July 5th or 7th, whenever it comes out. And so when they're trying to reset it, they no longer have access to their, when they graduate, they no longer have access to that email. So we had our kids last year, anyone that used a district email address, to change it to a personal email address. And I don't know if that was already said, but that was probably, the biggest thing for us is making sure that they were not using their school email address.
That's a really great point. Just making sure ahead of time that that's taken care of, because we do want the students to have access, because many of the students in AP classes are seniors. So we want them to be able to have access to that account once they graduate, because they will be concerned about those scores. Excellent. So let's look at question number 2 here. What was the biggest challenge you had as you transitioned to the new platform, and what was your solution or resolution to this? Tiffany, we'll go back to you.
So the first year, I think the biggest challenge is our system to pay for was just set up. They paid for 1 test, 2 tests, 3 tests. And so I didn't know what test they were paying for. So it was hours of trying to reconcile that. So the second year, we talked with our accounting. And so when they sign up for the test, they select which tests that they are paying for. And that saved us a lot. And then another challenge is the kids not using their legal name. And I don't know how to solve that problem yet. But just trying to stress it out to the teachers. This is their real name. This is their legal name. And so we kind of just stress it. But then, it's really up to the kid if it doesn't match with their account when they go to college, and it's up to them. So finally, I just kind of let that go. So probably letting that go was a challenge, and I did. And then having that platform on our payment through accounting to say which test they were paying for solved a lot of problems.
That's a great record keeping. So just a little bit of record keeping on your side, maybe a spreadsheet or a document that shows which test they've paid for. Matt, what did you guys find in Mid-Del was your biggest challenge?
We did that same thing as well. On that sort of registration guide, we have every single test, the full price pay and the multiple pay or the free introduced lunch count, and they turn that in when they turn their money into us. One of the things we found out between the first pilot year and the second pilot year, some of the sort of fees were different for late payments and things like that. So that was, we have our students before the November deadline pay basically a non-refundable deposit. And we went ahead and had our full price students, we have them pay $40, which happens to be exactly the late fee that ends up happening if they back out. So we don't have to go back and get more money for them or that kind of thing. But in our contract, we do say even if you are a free introduced lunch, you have to make up that additional $30 for the makeup fee if you don't register by the February or March deadline there. And we always do a week or two in advance on when we need to collect the money, just because it takes a while. And I want to say, Arlene may be able to sort of clarify this. There's a way to like continue to submit as you progress and not wait to hit that final button on the deadline, just so we don't have some crash of the internet. So just updating when you have it, so you don't wait to that last day, because it can be pretty hectic if you do. So.
And Matt, I really like how you guys addressed that you had an internal system for collecting the fees. Remember, students that don't sit for the exam will incur a fee. And if they are a student who gets the free and reduced discounted price of only $10, they still will have a $40 fee attached to them. And the state cannot supplement for that fee. So that fee will need to come from the student or from your district. So Matt talked about how they had an internal policy and it really helped them out. So that's something for your district to be thinking about, is how is your district going to go ahead and start thinking about those fees that could possibly need to be collected from the students. And he's exactly right. Think about doing this a couple of weeks before that November 15th deadline. You guys have to remember, all 50 states are hitting the same deadline of November 15th. I would love it if Oklahoma was done by November 1st. That would give us 2 weeks for you as AP coordinators to make any changes, collect those last minute fees. But at that time, we knew exactly who on our roster was and wasn't taking the test, and we had that ready to go in case of any last minute emergencies. Shauna, do you have anything that you'd add into what Tiffany and Matt have said?
And I think I saw Matt shaking his head when Tiffany said it, but the names, I can't tell you how many times I would try to find a student and it was their parent's name. And so, you know, because their parents would go register them instead of the student doing what they needed to do. So just making sure that they're using, that parents aren't doing this, that students are actually the ones filling out the information. And the platform that is now and what was there 2 years ago is completely different. For those that went through the first 2 years, they can update their email address, they can update their address. So there are opportunities now that we didn't have 2 years ago, and even some that they've tweaked since last year. So just staying on top of the students, giving out as much information as possible to the parents. Our first year, the most difficult thing was transitioning from we just got finished spring testing and enrolling to now we're asking parents, and we started in August at open house, giving out information, letting them know that, hey, this is going to be due, because we made our students pay in advance or upfront in order for us to order them. And so we started pushing that out, had teachers pushing out, sending out emails, anything that we could think of to make sure that we got the word out. And that first year, the transition was difficult because parents just felt like they just paid their due, you know, the AP exams in the spring, and now come August and September, we're asking for money again. And so that was tough, and it was hard to transition between the two. So that would be that's probably the biggest challenge we had.
It's a great perspective, Shauna. Remember, parents are important stakeholders in this process also. So make sure they are fully aware of all of the changes happening. If you need to have an AP night or create resources for them, I know that College Board has put out some wonderful resources that are ready to go on their website that you can print off that have these updated information on there. So utilize those resources they've provided and help your district make your parents aware. So what was the one thing that you guys did what is the one thing that you didn't do in year one that you had wished you had done? And how did you make adjustments or modifications for year two? So Tiffany, what did you guys learn from year one?
I think I probably kind of talked about that a little bit earlier, but one was having a way to know what test they were paying for. So we changed that. And then we also, we have them pay full fee. And it's a non-refundable full fee. And so they pay that the first time. And then we had a lot of people that didn't want to show. So we did a no-show fee the second year around. And it was just district-wide, just to get them to feel like they needed to come and take the test. So I think that was one thing that we changed. And then I think that's pretty much it. It's just the platform the second year was so much better than the Excel spreadsheet. It just was just a lot smoother.
Excellent. Matt, what did you guys learn from year one?
One of the things that we did in our second year was we had the second year registration. So kids that took a test the previous year, if they forgot their username the next year, they had to call College Board and get it all set up. It was too difficult for us to get the new registrations together and then have teachers or AP coordinators trying to help them recover their existing account. So, I mean, we definitely walked the first-time students through everything we could to try to make sure they were completely successful. But year two, year three, your juniors, your seniors, like, you better get used to this because we all forget our login information at some point. You got to figure out how to do that on your own. So.
Excellent. And Arlene said it earlier, when a student forgets their login, they have to be the ones to call. Now, they can be at school in your AP coordinator office, but it's the students that need to be on that phone call. So Matt, that's great advice. You know, put the responsibility back on them as juniors and seniors to take care of that. It's what the real world is like. So that's some great pieces of information. Shauna, did you guys learn anything from year one?
And I will, again, kind of default to what Tiffany said because we came from the same district. Tiffany and I worked along with Edmond Santa Fe. All three worked together in conjunction, and the way we did things, we did it uniformly and making sure that so that one school wasn't doing something different. And we did implement the no-show fee that second year. And just trying to think if there was anything else. Really also, I would say making sure that you're working with your career techs to know what exams they're taking. Again, just because it, you know, need to know, and this will help, this platform now will help so we know if a student is taking one exam there and one exam at your location because they do get that adjusted fee. And so I think that will help, but just working with your career techs too to make sure if a student is taking a test, you know, at both locations, that you're aware of it and who's registering that student.
Excellent. And that is a great conversation to have is, you know your contact at Career Tech and know what students are taking at your side and what students are taking there. That's a great piece of information. So lastly, as we finish up with our panel discussion here, Tiffany, are there any other thoughts or recommendations or cautions you would like to add as we move forward in the 1920 school year?
Well, the labels are amazing. So if all the stresses you're having right now, when you get the labels, you're going to be like, oh, this is well worth it. It's so good not to do pre-registration and everything's done. It was amazing. The labels are worth all the headaches that you're having right now. So just breathe on that, I think. But I think the system, I actually like it, and I think it does order the test for that person. One thing to know is you can't like give a test to somebody else. This person orders that test, so there's no buying somebody else's test. This is what it is. They get what they get. And so that's something that a lot of teachers were asking me about, like, well, they didn't order one, can they get one? So no, you can't sell the test like in the past. So that's something to be aware of and to make sure that your teachers know that, because that was a question that we got asked. And I think that was probably just all I can think of right now, but the labels are awesome.
Glad to hear that. So you will be receiving a page of labels for each student to put on there. And I think, Arlene, you can correct me, I think College Board figured up it's about 200 million hours that AP coordinators across the country use just to pre-bubble. So think of the time you will be saving. There is a light at the end of this tunnel. So Matt, what last minute thoughts do you have for us?
I think communication is huge, and not assuming that you tell everybody, parents, teachers, students this year that they're going to remember it next year. So you've got to sort of go back through it on all of our documents. We're like, we're in the second year of our pilot, or we're in the third year, you know, so we keep reminding them that this is what we did last year. And then one other thing that's just kind of a generic kind of AP thing is we really encouraged our sites to have kind of 2 AP coordinators, to have sort of a main one, but also to have somebody that understands the ordering system, that we kind of have some meetings to make sure that we're on track, because it is different. It is a change. And if that person leaves after this year, and this is your first year, I mean, that is a whole new thing to remember. So it just helps if somebody's sick or something comes up, you've got kind of a backup. It just, that's been a big help for us this year. So.
What a great perspective is to have someone else there. Turnover happens. And so have someone else there walking in those steps, just seeing what's going on. So next year, as we start the school year again, this does make it a little easier. Great ideas. And Shauna, we'll wrap it up with you. What last minute thoughts do you have?
Honestly, I would just say if they run into questions, concern, reach out to you. They can reach out to myself. Any of us that were on the pilot program, we get it. I had no idea what we were going to be in for 2 years ago, or I guess 3 years ago now. And it was, that was a rough year. The second year was so much better. So I think reaching out, talking, and again, what Matt said, communicate with your parents more than anything else. You cannot tell them enough when the exam orders are due, how much it's going to be, because at the end of the day, you will still have parents going, we didn't know anything about this. And so making sure that you're using every single type of communication, whether that's a robocall, whether that's emails, flyers, whatever you can do to get that information out, but communicating with the parent, because for any of us that are parents, you can ask a kid something and they're like, I don't know. And so really making sure that you're communicating that directly with the parents as well.
So I have to say, for the panelists, you guys were amazing. So I'm telling you up front that if College Board asks if they need some voices to be on some panels, I'm putting your names in. I think the information and the advice that you gave to your colleagues was not only spot on, but I think it was practical, things that they can do day to day. So I hope that for the districts who are out there who are listening, it did help to take a little bit of the edge off, and you're not as stressed as you were. I know I can't, it's hopeful to say it's going to alleviate all of your stress, but maybe it's you feel that it's doable now. And quite honestly, that there are people out there that you can reach out to that have some practical information, some real strategies, and some things to do to make it easier. So I want to follow up on a couple of things that they said before we go on to the next pieces. Matt said about submit often, submit early. Yes, you can. So the way that the submit button works is every time you hit it, it updates whatever changes that you have. So you go in, if you have right now, you've got some folks and you have confirmed that they are testing or not testing. You hit the submit button today, you go in 2 weeks from now and you hit it again, it just updates the changes in between the last submit time and the one that you're currently doing. The other thing to remember is that the final deadline at midnight on November 15th is Eastern Standard Time. It's midnight their time, so it will be 11 o'clock your time. So I don't want anybody to get lost in submitting at 11:50 and wondering why their order didn't go through, or that there's lots of late fees. So make sure that you sort of pace yourself and figure out how that happens. The other recommendation is, and I'm sure that the three folks on the pilot can tell you why you want to submit early, is if you run into problems and you have to reach out to AP services, we are not always quick and responding and getting resolutions. Sometimes it takes us a while. So you don't want to push too close to the deadline when you're waiting to submit your order because you're waiting on College Board to give you an answer. You want to give yourself time that if there are issues or problems that you have to research or resolve, that there's time to allow that to happen. There's a lot of people, a lot of moving parts, a lot of things going on. So as much time as you can allow yourself to do that, allow that, and ask questions, whether it's to me, your colleagues, or AP services. If you need to know, reach out. If we don't have the answers, we'll find it. Any other last questions, comments from anyone before we go on to the next spot? Thank you again to all three of you. I appreciate your patience with the 2 years. They are being very, very kind because year one was not a pretty picture. So I appreciate them going the distance and coming out on this end and still speaking very positive about it. So thank you.
Yes, excellent.
All right, so this is where we're going in our next steps. I don't know if I can link to those. I wanted to point out in your AP coordinator manual, if you haven't gotten your copy yet, they should have all been mailed out to you. They should all be available to you, but you can download it.
Desktop one?
Yeah. There is a planning calendar. I don't know if we're going to be able to show it to you, but it's on page 12 and 13. That is absolutely amazing. It goes through way more than what we're actually talking about here today. So I recommend that you look at your calendar and use that as a way to figure out, are you on track with getting things done and making things happen? And the reason why I say that is it does mention some things in here about getting your meeting with your SSD coordinator and starting that conversation and making sure you're moving that piece along, and checking with your school calendar for conflicts, for other things like that. So we're hitting the highlights of what must get done. Your planning calendar in your coordinator has some other details that will just make your life easier if you are using that as a guide. We have some professional development opportunities that are coming up. What you see here are the professional development opportunities that Robbyn is providing, and they are around the new teacher resources.
Yes, so we'll be offering 4 trainings across the state of Oklahoma, starting in just a couple weeks in Ada, and then in the Oklahoma City area, Stillwater, Tulsa. We have 2 more that we're still looking for in Lawton and Woodward, but we'll be spending 3 hours diving into the new online resources that teachers have access to, looking at the assessment pieces that are in there, the formative assessments, and other resources that are new that would be so beneficial to you and your students in the classroom. We're also going to be looking at your new course and exam binder, the description binder that you were given. So you should have all been able to register for one of those and be sent to you free of charge. If you haven't done that yet, I would highly suggest that you log into your account or go to the College Board website, simply register, and that will be sent to you. But we're going to be diving into those new binders, looking at the resources that's been put into there and the careful attention that College Board and the program staff went into, how they spiraled the ideas throughout, and looking at the rich resources that are now available for all the courses. So you'll see the cities available there. On the Google document attached to this webcast, I have put the link to that. You can also access it on the AP page of the State Department. But there will be plenty of seats available, and so we'd love to have you there.
So point of clarification, if you're an AP coordinator, unfortunately you don't get a binder. Only the AP teachers get the CEDs. At our next webinar, Robbyn and I talked about, we are going to do a little bit of a deep dive into the teacher resources just so that you are aware of them as a coordinator and can help encourage teachers and students to use those, as we also talk about next steps and processes. So what I have listed are the process webinars. So we just finished the operational overview and setup. So the next one that started on September 12th is preparing and submitting through November the 12th. You can actually watch that one now. The other 2, if you missed them or if you just really liked them and want to go back and see them again, you can watch them on demand. But those are all 5 of the sessions that are going to be available. And Robbyn also does monthly newsletters that goes out with updates or reminders, information that's happening in the world of AP.
Yeah, so I send out a monthly newsletter, one for the teachers and one for the coordinators, with resources, ideas, the latest happenings, and keeping you up to date. So if you don't receive those, the easiest way to sign up for our newsletters is just to go to the SDE website, which is sde.ok.gov, and arrow down to the very bottom of the homepage, and there's a huge box that says sign up for newsletters. You can put your email address in there, and it will give you all of the newsletters that we send out here at the Office of Curriculum and Instruction, the Assessment Office, all of the offices here at the State Department. If you're an AP teacher, I'd suggest you sign up for the AP one that I send out, but also sign up for your content area. So if you are a language teacher, there is a secondary ELA one that goes out every month that is also chock full of ideas and resources. So do a double dip while you're there at one place and sign up for both of those.
So that sort of brings us to our closing for today. Again, all of the up-to-date information is going to be on AP Central. That should be your homepage for the year, but I just kind of want to bring us back to center. These are, again, all of the APs for services. Notice that that one, the AP services, there's a different number than the one we put in the drive that is specifically for account help. So there looks like there are 2 AP services, and I'll get clarification on when to use which one, because we saw the one that we were looking at specifically about the interim accounts. That's the number that we put in the chat, but this is just the general AP for services for students. But note it is different as the one for educators. And then I think we should have our contact information, all 3 of us. So our next webinar is October 15th at 11 a.m. We hope that you're going to be able to join us. We thank you for spending time with us today. If there's something that you'd like for us to cover that we are not, you can shoot me or Robbyn or Shauna an email that said, can you guys cover this for us? I have questions. We're happy to take suggestions.
Also, we would want to answer a couple questions that came up in the chat box before we head out today. So one talks about the fees for free and reduced lunch students. So in Oklahoma, the same fee assistance will be available this year like has been available in the past. So your free and reduced lunch students will only pay $10 per exam, and they can take multiple exams at that cost. Someone brought up the fact that when they went in and put in that a free and reduced student would be taking an exam, it still looks like $53 on their account. I am working with College Board to finalize the fee assistance. So it looks like maybe from your AP coordinators, it's not updated just quite yet, but you have my promise that it will only be the $10 for our free and reduced lunch students. And also those students that do not qualify for free and reduced lunch but are taking multiple exams, there is a $25 discount per exam. This also includes students who do not take the same exams on the same campus. So if a student takes one exam at the high school and one at the career tech, they still get that $25 discount, and College Board will know they're taking multiple exams because it is the same AP number attached to that student. So I think all of the questions that have been asked today in the chat box, we talked about the interim studies. Someone asked about the AP training coming up. The one in Tulsa is on the 28th at the Tulsa Library. And so we've taken all of the questions out of the chat box today, transposed them to the Google document. You will have access to the Google document once today's webinar is over, or if you're watching the live link. And Arlene and I check that Google document frequently so that we can answer your questions. So we thank you for giving up some time for us today. We look forward to seeing you again next month, and have a wonderful afternoon. Making sure we got everything. Yeah. Dun, da, da, da.
We're only a few minutes over.